JD here, and as you can see, we are back once again. And like with some very recent videos, there always seems to be a new development or something significant within the F1 community. And sadly, it continues to remain around the topic of cheating. And myself personally, I just want to say I don't really plan to make many more videos in this. I think it's kind of beating a dead horse at this stage, because I think at the end of the day, the only way we're going to have 100% confidence is when we know there's going to be a very highly sophisticated anti-cheat system, and if F1 esports is performed on a LAN and done so in a correct controlled environment. So yeah, I think everything we're going to be discussing here is just purely speculation, just discussions, getting people's opinions. But I don't think we are really going to have the full answers we want. And really, that's the purposes of these videos, just to make people aware and also try and put pressure on the developer and the publisher to actually incorporate an anti-cheat system and to make a competition worth $750,000 to actually be done on a LAN, which I find absolutely bizarre that it wasn't done in the first place. But the topic of conversation will continue around Mr. Thomas Ronhaar. And again, I just want to say, please keep the comments respectful. Please always have an open mind, because I myself, I'm not accusing the guy. I think what I have seen, there could be explanations and possibilities, but no, there are definitely a lot of talking points to be going through. And as I touched on in my last video, Thomas Ronhaar has actually changed his brakes to a load cell, and I was quite perplexed with this, because I have seen, and being in F1 esports in the past myself, know that it was always mandatory for a load cell to be used, and everyone had to use exactly the same thing. After speaking with quite a few drivers behind the scenes, apparently prior to the first event, it was actually a bit of a mess, because some teams received the Fanatec V2 pedals, but some other teams only received the Fanatec version 1 pedals. And that actually meant through some of the events, I don't know if it was just the first or maybe the second event, there were many drivers who were not using the same pedals or the same equipment. One of the worst parts is that the load cell was not even mandatory, and the drivers had a free choice to use it, which for me, I just find actually just quite unbelievable that there are drivers who are not using the same equipment during a competition with this amount of prize money on the line. And I guess you could argue that, well, everyone just had the choice, so they could have just used, the same entirely if there was a preference for one or the other. But I think one of the main principles of a LAN competition, especially in gaming, is that everyone really has to demonstrate their adaptability to the same equipment and prove who is the best using the same equipment. So I really do find that quite extraordinary, if I have to be honest. And after some complaints, they actually all reverted back to the V1 pedals for the remainder of the series. And I think Mr. Jarno Opmeer, who is definitely not shy of voicing his opinion, he actually did a very good interview with Jimmy Broadbent recently, so definitely check that out. He actually did a tweet towards Fanatec around the time of this, but then obviously was very swiftly removed by his social media team, I can imagine. But this also explains why Thomas Ronhaar wasn't using a load cell brake. And, that isn't always strange. There are drivers who are just very much used to a certain piece of equipment, and they feel that's where their comfort zone is. However, my experience and many other drivers, I would find that a load cell brake, in addition of one, will actually allow much greater control of the trail braking. So it might not necessarily increase the raw pace, but it should definitely help with the consistency under braking. And the real benefit of a load cell brake is that your muscle memory is now using a force going into each braking zone rather than trying to calculate the travel or distance. Because if you actually sat in a real F1 car, you would find that the brake pedal is very, very stiff. It doesn't really have much movement. It's like actually hitting a brick wall. And that's because scientifically, your muscle memory, it can generate the force so much more precisely and consistently rather than having to judge a distance all the time. And that's why typically when a competitive driver does use a lower cell brake, they actually do find an increase in pace and consistency. So that's actually quite a scary prospect in the case of Thomas Ronhaar, because that could say that maybe there is even more to come once he does get used to it. But the main topic of this is actually the recent activity of Thomas Ronhaar. And in my last video, I made the proposal to him to actually jump on Xbox and replicate or try to replicate some of the times he has achieved. And it actually appears that he has listened. Although his response in public has been quite silent and quite deafening, it does seem to be that he has actually decided to take it upon himself to try and at least prove the legitimacy of his pace. So he's actually jumped on Xbox in this past week and he has completed 6 different tracks. So that is Belgium, Bahrain, Silverstone, Imola, Suzuka, and Miami. And 5 out of these 6 were actually done in F1 esports. So we're just going to run through some of these times and talk about some of the differences between the times he's done on Xbox versus the times he's done on PC, make a few comparisons, talk about it a little bit. Obviously, just let me know what your thoughts are down below, and then I'll give you a little bit of what my opinion is. So if we just go through each track one by one, Bahrain on Xbox, he achieved a 126.932, which was half a tenth clear of Rusty, the next fastest driver. And each one of these was a world record, by the way. On PC, he did a 126.514, which is over 4 tenths faster than his Xbox. And the gap between him and second is actually bigger on PC than it was on Xbox, which is quite interesting. And I think that's Daniel Haddad, who is 2 tenths behind him. And this was probably the most practiced track for F1 esports because it was the debut race, the very first race in Event 1. To have this much of an advantage is, go use the word, very impressive. That's to say the least. If we move on to Belgium, I think this is one of the more controversial time trials he did on the PC, but on Xbox he achieved a 141.368, which is almost a tenth clear, not quite a tenth, but almost a tenth clear of FRA Elite Otis Lawrence. On Belgium, he's actually achieved a 41.0. This time has been deleted. He deleted this quite a while ago, in fact, I think a month or so, and he did it before the F1 esports event at Spa, and that would mean his time on PC is 3 tenths faster than Xbox and then 2 tenths faster than anyone else in F1 esports. So again, the gap between Xbox and PC seems to be quite big for him. On Silverstone on Xbox, he achieved a 125.865, which is only 400ths clear of Elite, so very, very close. On PC, he's done a 125.728, so that is over a tenth faster than Xbox. But the gap to Barry Boromond on PC, where all the F1 esports drivers are, the gap is actually bigger at 700. So the competition and the times he's done on Xbox, the competition is actually closer on Xbox than it is on PC, where you would think the level of competition is, well, I think you can safely say it is higher. So yeah, that's definitely quite interesting. Imola on Xbox, he's done a 114.028. So again, only 200ths clear of Elite. On PC, he's gone a full tenth faster of a 113.925. And I think he's the only driver who has managed a 113, as the next closest driver is over a tenth behind on PC. Suzuka, this was a pretty big talking point, which we did in one of my previous videos. On Xbox, he's done a 127.392. So it's actually got over a tenth clear of Elite. So clearly a very good track for him. On PC, he managed a 127.174. And that is 2 tenths faster than his Xbox time. And the gap to Lucas Blakely, it's not quite 2 tenths. It's 0.180, so almost 2 tenths of a gap to the current F1 esports world champion this year. Miami and Xbox and PC, the gap was, or the time was pretty much identical. He has the world record on Xbox by a tenth from Smokey, who's a very fast driver. And on PC, time is pretty much exactly the same, 125.5. And the Xbox world record would get him in the top 6. And that's kind of one of the main talking points I want to say about these times. And from what I've seen, doing a little bit of research and even just talking about myself, and we'll be talking about some other drivers as well, is that the gaps between the platforms doesn't actually seem to be that big. And I think in the past, when you switched from a console to PC, mainly due to the frame rate, because you could run much higher frames on the PC, and the lack of input lag between your devices, I'd say PC was always definitely a fair amount faster of a platform. But if I'm talking from my own personal experience, because I've switched between the platforms quite consistently myself, and even showing some of these times here at Silverstone, I haven't really found really any difference between my pace when I've gone from Xbox, a console, to PC. I think it's always usually been within a tenth of a second, maybe a tenth max, and that could just purely be because I'm just driving a little bit better, or I have a little bit more of a preference between the platforms. But obviously, I'm not quite on that F1 esports level right now. But if we compare it with a driver such as Otis Lawrence, who has come from Xbox, who is definitely the fastest driver on that platform, now moving over to PC, doing really good things as well. If we take a look at some of his laps, Abu Dhabi, there is only 1,000th of a difference between his Xbox lap and his PC lap. Silverstone, there's only 300ths of a difference. Imola, there's only 100th difference. Suzuka is the biggest one. That was actually about a 10th difference. But USA, he was actually even faster in Xbox by 500ths. And this is kind of the same findings I have myself. And because I don't think there's a really big pool of drivers who have been switching consistently between a console and a PC, I don't really find there is actually much difference at all. The main difference is that the input lag between the devices. And since we've had this issue with the FPS where if you ran higher than 60 FPS, you would actually start to get impacted by the curbs in a negative way on PC. All drivers on PC now run 60 FPS competitively, which means there really is not that much difference between the platforms at all, the handling wise and everything. Obviously, there might be some differences in force feedback, something I definitely do notice a little bit. But in terms of actual raw lap time, I haven't really noticed a significant change. And no, you can see with Otis Lawrence, there hasn't really been a significant change there either. So that's why I find with Ronhaar, again, it purely could just be because obviously he's got his new low cell brakes, hasn't played an Xbox for a long time. I do think it's definitely harder going from PC to Xbox because you have to get used to that little bit of that input lag delay when you're turning the wheel and then the game reacts to it, which is definitely, I can tell from my experience when I did league racing, was definitely something that was quite hard to get used to. But there's some of the lap times, especially at Bahrain, Belgium, Suzuka, Imola, there are quite a big difference between them. And no, I think the guy has only really had a week to do it. I don't know how long he has actually spent on these. Maybe he just wanted to jump on and just prove he could get a world record because, like I said before, I think it is significantly harder to cheat on a console. Although it's not impossible, it definitely is possible. I don't think anyone has done it in F1 though. But you really need some serious expertise in terms of the programming and hacking world if you wanted to achieve that. And no, I just want to say this. There is absolutely no doubts that Thomas Ronhaar, in my opinion, is the level of an F1 esports driver, whether you think he's doing it logistically or not. But yeah, there is a little bit of a difference between these, and especially for like Bahrain, to not be able to get within 4/10. Same for Belgium, not to be able to get within 3/10. And I think one of the interesting things as well is that the gap between him and P2 in the leaderboard is actually closer than the gap between him P2 on PC, where these are all F1 esport drivers. And without disrespecting the Xbox community, because that's where I came from, the level is not on that same level. Because these F1 esports drivers, it is their job 9 to 5 to be performing and becoming as fast as they possibly can. So he seems to have more of an advantage to the field on the more competitive platform than he does on Xbox. But again, I think there's a lot of factors in that. He may not just be used to the platform. He's changed the load cell. The force feedback might feel different for him, because I could definitely attest that is the case. So I think there is many factors. So I don't think any of this proves or disproves anything. Like I said at the start of the video, I think the only way we're really going to know this and to not have any doubts of drivers is to simply get them on the LAN in a controlled environment where things are being monitored properly. We're not playing online with the use of whatever pedals you want and with your own PCs, and there's no anti-cheat system in that. We need a very sophisticated anti-cheat system if F1 esports is going to be successful in the future. Because without this, I really do feel the integrity, and it's just depriving people of opportunities who are doing it legit, and they're not getting their opportunity because, like we've seen recently, there have been other drivers who have been questioned as well, other drivers of a lower level who have been exposed to cheating. And I think it's simply down to the pressure of trying to succeed, trying to get noticed, trying to get in esports, because if you can succeed in this and do well, then you can definitely make somewhat of a career within this industry. So please let me know what your thoughts are. I myself, again, I'm not directly accusing. I do think everything that Thomas Ronhaar has achieved, I think there is a possibility of it. But I do commend him in a way for actually jumping on this and showing, because I do believe in Xbox those times, there are not really any doubts in my mind. He is showing that he is one of the fastest drivers, but obviously there are many things you can do to increase your performance, which we have seen. So please keep the comments respectful, have an open mind, let me know your thoughts, and I will be catching you very, very soon. Peace.